Hello, my name is Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video. Of course, it's the international break at the moment, hopefully soon to end, and game week 30 will be among us. We're going to be going through our transfer targets ahead of this game week. Let us know what you think, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe. 40% of you that are watching this aren't currently subscribed, so let's get into it.
Okay, so kicking off with our Game Week 30 transfer targets, we're looking at defenders and Ben White in particular. He's been picking up a couple of attack and returns in recent weeks. Obviously, this is for the people who are maybe looking to double up on that Arsenal defence. From my point of view, wildcarding Game Week 31, he's not really near the top of my shopping list, but obviously it all depends on your strategy. And I think Ben, you're looking at someone like Ben White, right?
Yeah, definitely. And probably from game week 32 is the time that I'll probably look to bring him in. I think the next couple of weeks you probably get away with not having him in the immediate term, but I do think going forward he's going to be a really good player to have. He's very much nailed in that Arsenal defence. Attacking returns quite high as well. Got the most points out of any Arsenal defender so far this season. So he is doing well in that regard. And obviously, it's a little bit differential from your Gabriel and Saliba. A lot of managers may go Gabriel and Saliba, get a clean sheet wipeout, but there's a lot more chance that Ben White could get an attacking return even with no clean sheet. It's all bringing up to that game week 34, sort of bringing in defenders. And all of this for me is to bring them in for 34. Obviously, if you're doing a free hit, then you may not be as worried about bringing someone like Ben White in. But for me, in my situation where I'm going to be potentially wildcarding out of 34 into 35, this is a great option for those managers looking to do that.
Yeah, 100%. And then moving on to another defender who's been scoring goals of recent weeks, it's Ryan Ait-Nouri. He's obviously been playing in a different position due to obviously the amount of injuries that Wolves have picked up. I think he was even positioned up front towards the back end of their last fixture. So he's getting into some really good positions, creating a lot of chances and scoring some goals as well. So from this point of view, it's probably you're not even looking at clean sheets necessarily with Wolves. You're looking at attack and returns with him, and with Neto out, with Huang out, he's probably going to play left wing, right wing again. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? I know you own him, right?
Yeah, I own him, and I have owned him for a long, long time actually. And I've done well not to transfer him out because when Wolves had all these players in, the attacking threat was not as high. But we see, like you said, left mid, left wing, striker. He's playing all the positions, and as a technician, he's the best that Wolves have. Very versatile, and yeah, again, a double in 34, some decent fixtures before that as well. I think you're probably like as a differential right now. He's probably the best you're going to get in terms of anyone in FPL at the moment. And to compile that with a double game week in 34 is really not too much to sniff at the price point that you're paying as well. It's essentially not really a risk because you can rotate him in and out with your other defenders as well.
Yeah, really nice option. Another cheap option as well in defence who doubles in game week 34 is Munoz from Crystal Palace. Obviously, a recent signing for them. He's just scored on international duty for Colombia as well. And since he's sort of come in and the new managers come in, he's looked quite attacking in their new sort of wing back setup. And I think he could be someone that's going under the radar for sure. I think a lot of managers like myself will be looking at him on the free hit in Game Week 34, but I think in general you'll see some decent returns from him from between now and the end of the season. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
I think in your situation, he's probably the perfect player to bring in on that free hit. For managers like me, I think probably a little bit more apprehensive on bringing him in just because there's so many unknowns and a couple of really tough fixtures before that double. I think they
Yeah.
play City and Arsenal before that double. So if you can afford to bench him in those two game weeks before the double, then definitely look at bringing him in because the attacking output, like you said, is there for him, and he's getting goals, assists, he's getting some really good stats going forwards as well. It's just those two fixtures. If you can afford to bench him, then by all means look to bring him in over the next two and 34. But if you can't really afford to be benching any of your defenders because of a couple of other fires in the team, it might be one to not jump straight on.
Yeah, and then finally, our last defensive pick for Game Week 30's transfer targets, it's Malo Gusto at 4.2 million. I'm surprised that he's still that cheap, to be honest. He's got Burnley at home this week, but in general, Chelsea's fixtures between now and the end of the season are ridiculously good. I think they double two, potentially three times as well. The only caveat here is if Reece James comes back, and we know how injury prone he is. So for me, that's not too much of a worry at the moment. He's got good attacking threat. Chelsea's defence is not necessarily the worst in the league either. So for me, he's like a lock in a game week 30, game week 31 wildcard, that's for sure. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, really like him as a potential option. Again, looking forward to the double game weeks in 35 and 37 and potentially 36 for Chelsea. We'll see they'll get two of those three game weeks as a double.
Mm.
So you're going to want to triple up on them at some point. For me, I'm probably not looking at him in the short term. Like, obviously, the fixtures are decent for game week 31, 32, and 33 in particular, with Burnley, Sheffield United, and Everton to come up. But I'd probably be looking at, for me personally, after 35, see what the situation is with Reece James. I don't think he gets straight back into that team. Gusto's playing really, really well.
Yeah.
But definitely an exciting option to own. And for a Chelsea team that is improving, maybe a little bit inconsistent at points, but it's that seems to be a way with all Chelsea assets this season, apart from maybe Cole Palmer, who's been sensational throughout. Moving on into the midfielders, and the first one is the obvious one, Mohamed Salah. The big question is going to be if you're going to be bringing him in this game week or next game week when they play Sheffield United. For me, I'm probably looking at next game week, as I only have one free transfer on my team, but I do think it's very much team dependent on whether you're going to be bringing in Salah this week. Josh, what are your thoughts on Salah? Are you on the fence about which week to bring him in, or do you have a strategy on when you're going to bring Salah in?
Yeah, I think he's in one of those players that you need to bring in as soon as possible and make use of that low ownership. For me, I'll be bringing him in this week for Bukayo Saka. I think that Brighton fixture is really nice. Salah captaincy potential there between him and Son for me this week. Haven't yet decided upon that, but yeah, like I say, his ownership, it won't necessarily be as low as what it is at the moment, like 25% I think across all players in the game, but it will still remain pretty low, and that's something I'm looking to capitalise on. Obviously, game week 31, he's got Sheffield United. Everyone's going to hop on him for that, so I think this Brighton fixture could be a nice time to jump on. And obviously, managers who don't, and like yourself, Ben, will sort of be hoping that Brighton can sort of keep him quiet for that fixture.
Okay, so moving on, and we've got Eberici Eze in here as well. And again, a really nice double game week fixture for Crystal Palace. 34 is looking to be really, really interesting with the fixtures that we got. And it's that time of the season. None of us have really thought about Palace options too much. Maybe Josh at the start of the season with that Eze run that didn't get him too many points, but the rest of the team sort of helped him out with that. Looking ahead to him, Eze, or if Elise is fit as well, that is if they're fit. They're both pretty injury prone. Decent options, especially with the fixture they got in game week 34.
Yeah, I'm tempted not to bring Eze in because every time I do, he seems to get absolutely nothing for me. But yeah, Eze obviously is a decent option. Probably one of the most creative players. I think if I had to choose between the two, Eze and Elise, I probably would edge it to Elise. I think he's just got a little bit more cutting edge, and when he does play, he seems to return pretty much all the time. I have no idea on the return date for Elise though. It seems like you say they both get injured really frequently. Eze, I think he only played like 60 minutes against Spurs, and that was I think the penultimate game before the international break. So it'll be good to see maybe not this week, but in the coming weeks, like you mentioned, how many minutes these guys can get. I think someone else from Palace as well that goes massively under the radar and he seems to return quite consistently is Jordan Ayew as well. Any time that these two are out of the team, he seems to be popping up with goals and assists as well. So there's three options there I think you could look at and potentially have one, if not two, for that double game week in 34.
Was that Andreas Pereira
Yeah,
that I'm looking at?
he is.
Right.
He's playing number 10 for Fulham now, mate.
Right. Okay, so next up on our list is Andreas Pereira. Yes, you read that right. Andreas of Fulham. A couple of really decent fixtures coming up for them. Sheffield United away, Forest away, and you'd argue Newcastle at home from an attacking perspective is decent. The only caveat to that, of course, is the lack of returns in recent weeks for Andreas. But moving into that number 10 position for Fulham, with the form that Muniz is on at the moment as well, he could be the creator for a fairly free scoring Fulham team at the moment. They look on absolute fire. Josh, I know you were sort of probably more keen on him than I was when I saw this list. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I just think obviously since Fulham have sort of changed their system, since Paulinho left the team, he's been playing much more advanced, like we saw sort of last season, where he was picking up a lot of returns, and obviously was one of the best enablers last year. I think between him and Iwobi, either one of them are a decent midfield spot for those Fulham assets. Obviously, they've got Sheffield United at home this week. They're unbelievable at home as well. It'll be interesting to see how they fare up against Sheffield United, though, because it's a lot different game to those teams that they've been beating at home. You know, the likes of like Spurs and stuff like that. They're not going to play the same way. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But I think Andreas is one of those players. If you can hop on now, he might be one of those guys who sort of goes under the radar. It's a little bit more differential. Obviously, Muniz is sort of well known at the moment, and we'll talk about him in a second. But I think Andreas has the potential on set pieces as well to get you a couple of attack and returns over the next three. Okay, then, and then moving on to the forward spots, as you can see, we've got Darwin Nunez who tops our list. The fixtures for Liverpool pre the double are unbelievable, and then they have the double as well in Game Week 34. So you should be looking to triple up on them by the time Game Week 34 comes around. Darwin Nunez for me is arguably the second best Liverpool asset after Mo Salah. He gets so many chances. He scores goals. He gets assists. He can be frustrating to own, of course, but for me, I don't see anyone else with Jota out at the moment that could even challenge him for that second place spot. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, really like him as an option. I think he's going to be good for FPL managers. Again, I think possibly the sooner that you get both these guys in, the better. I anticipate him being fit for game week 30 and beyond. So really looking forward to owning him for the double at a minimum. And then the fixtures, like you said, around it are pretty decent as well. The only one you'd be looking at is potentially Manchester United in 32. But then again, easy enough to bench him with the plethora of options that we have in midfield and up front. Yeah, really like Darwin. Of course, like his XG and what have you memes that come with that. It is what it is, but he is a fantastic option nonetheless. And for people that are looking to potentially hop off like Ollie Watkins with his bit of a tough run coming up, it's obviously a risk, but I think the ceiling of Darwin is really, really high.
Yeah, definitely. And then moving on to Muniz, as we briefly discussed when talking about Andreas Pereira, obviously in ridiculous form. He did come off early in their last fixture against Spurs due to a knock. I think something here that worries me is a little bit is Raul Jimenez's minutes. We brought it up before in game week 29's transfer targets. Obviously, he went on to score a brace in that game week, but 63 minutes and he's scoring a brace is really good. Don't get me wrong, but it is something to be cautious of. I don't think he's a 90-minute player at the moment. Despite the fixtures coming up, they are really good, and you could even argue that he doesn't need to be a 90-minute player because he is only 4.5 million. So worst case scenario, you've got some dead rubber player on your bench. Obviously, if you're bench boosting later on, that's a little bit different. So you just need to be careful about that. But overall, he's been a fantastic asset in those last few weeks for Fulham, and I think if you're looking at him, it could be a good option. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, this game week and next game week are probably the last two game weeks that you're going to be able to take
Yeah.
advantage of getting his points in. Of course, it's not guaranteed, but he's in good enough form to warrant having him in your considerations. Obviously, a lot of managers who are not free hitting in 34 probably won't look ahead at getting him in. But if you are free hitting in 34, definitely an option to sort of hop on and hop off as long as your team looks strong enough to be able to make some luxuries transfers like bringing in and out Minis into your team.
And then our final transfer target for this week is Nicholas Jackson. Obviously, the Burnley at home fixture this week, and as we mentioned along with Gusto, some really nice fixtures around their doubles that are coming up too. The main caveat with Nicholas Jackson is that he's on 9 yellow cards, and I think it's another 3 game weeks he has to survive. Otherwise, he will get a 2-match suspension, which isn't ideal. Obviously, Ben mentioned earlier you can obviously rotate him out, bench him, and stuff like that if he does get suspended. But it's definitely something to be cautious of. He tends to get booked most of the time, but I think in recent weeks and towards the back end of the season, he's looked a lot better than what he did at the start of the season. I think he was struggling to gel into that Chelsea team in terms of like the attacking build-up play and stuff like that, alongside Palmer and Sterling. I think he's looked really decent. And for me, I'd be considering him if he was on like maybe 8 yellow cards. Nunez as well, we didn't even mention. He's also on 8 yellow cards, so that's something to be wary of with him as well. So something to be wary of. But would you take the risk on him, Ben?
I'd be tempted to. Again, very much dependent on team structure and chip strategy. If you're free hitting in 34, yes, I'd probably look at it having sort of wild carded into a potential triple up for Chelsea. If you're like me and you're not going to be free hitting in 34, it's easy enough to wait until 35 to bring him in and wait for those doubles to be announced for Chelsea before bringing in the triple up. So I do think, regardless, everyone's going to have him in for Chelsea's two double game week fixtures or two double game weeks in a row. And I just think that, it's just a case of when you're going to bring him in and how much you're going to be bringing him in for as well.
Okay, so that wraps up our Game Week 30 transfer targets. Let us know if we've missed anyone in the comments down below. Who are you planning to bring in this game week? For me, as I mentioned in the video, it's going to be probably Bukayo Saka to Mo Salah this week. And then, just sort of go into my Game Week 31 wildcard after that. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I'll probably be looking at rolling the free transfer this week and potentially bringing in Salah and one other next game week. It will either be Salah and Darwin or be Salah and a midfield budget enabler for the double game week. So we'll have to see what happens with that. As always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later. Have a good game week, everyone.